Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to set up and play My Little Pony Adventures in Equestria, which is a deck building game from Renegade Games Studios and obviously has the My Little Pony IP. In this particular deck building game, you are tasked with overcoming 3 hurdles and then taking on a final challenge. To do that, you're going to be kind of building up your supply of sugar cubes, which are represented in these 3 various colors. The colors do matter. The big ones are worth 5, the little ones are worth 1. And to do that, you're going to obviously be building up your deck, and you're going to use your cards not just to purchase more cards from the adventure row, but also to travel to locations and basically acquire your supply of sugar cubes. So let's first talk about how you set up your particular starting hand and your player. So first thing you want to do is go ahead and pick a pony. So in this instance, I have chosen Rainbow Dash. You could choose any of any of the 6 ponies that have the large card. So you want to get the large card and the standee ready. Then you're going to take the starting card that is particular to your character. You're going to take 5 helpful town pony cards, 2 a good clean race cards, 1 what you need as organization, and 1 working together. You can see these are all gray. That represents that they are the starting cards. You're going to take all these along with your unique starting card, shuffle them up, and this is basically your starting deck, and you're going to place it to the left of your main pony card here, and make sure your main pony card is on starting side up. Then what we need to do is set up our locations here. So we're going to be able to go to these locations, complete the tasks on them, and for the most part that's going to give us the ability to gain sugar cubes. Ponyville here, Town Square, and you can see that the location cards all have this back on them, which make them very different from the main deck. The Ponyville Town Square card is always going to be there. It's always going to be an option, and you can see that these tasks can be redone over and over again. That's what this recycled symbol means. You're going to take the rest of the locations, you're going to give them a shuffle, and then you need to put out 3. In the rule book it says to set them out like this. But for the purposes of space at the moment, just to fit it all in here, we're just going to put them like this. Alright, when you are playing the game, it does not matter. Adjacency of locations does not matter. What matters is the movement payment that you need to spend to move to particular locations. So Ponyville Town Square just takes 1 movement to get back to, but you could go from Ponyville Carousel Boutique all the way to Golden Oak Library by just paying the 2 movement. But you always want to have Ponyville Town Square and then 3 other locations at your disposal. You're going to take the rest of these shuffled up and set them off to the side, because you will be drawing new locations throughout the game. Then you've got your deck of action cards, ally cards, and artifact cards. Also, sometimes you may be shuffling certain situation cards into the deck. For the first game, though, they suggest you not shuffle these in, and I'll explain why in a second. So, once you have shuffled up your deck, and I probably did not shuffle this one super well, so we're probably going to see a lot of the same characters, yeah. But you would create your adventure row of 6 cards. Again, I did not do a very good job shuffling at this point, so these are all allies, but you can see that there's like an artifact and there's an action card, so they're in there. At this point, you kind of have everything that you need set up, but we do need something to fight against. We need an adversary. So the main goal of the game is going to be to take on one of these final challenges. So you can see in the core box here there's 4, and they have various levels, 3 at level 2, and then the big nasty one at level 3. Obviously they suggest to start small, so pick a level 2 one. You can choose which one, or you can flip them over, shuffle them up, and choose one at random. we'll just say we're going to play against Best Knight Ever. The rest of these can go back into the box. Then you're going to take your hurdle cards. Your hurdle cards, you need to choose 3 of them that you're going to overcome throughout the game before you can take on the final challenge. And you can see these are also numbered in level 3s, 2s, and 1s. A basic game would be a level 1 challenge, a level 2 challenge, followed by a level 3 challenge. This obviously though is a great way to mitigate the difficulty of the game. You could have 3 level 1 hurdles to take on and make a game very easy. You could have 3 level 3 hurdles to take on and make a game very hard. They recommend, at least in the beginning, to take a level 1, to take a level 2, and obviously you would flip these over and choose them at random and take a level 3. You're going to take the rest of the hurdle cards, shuffle them up, and similar to the location deck, you're going to set them off to the side because you're going to be drawing from this stack later on in the game. Then you would take your random level 3 that you haven't seen, your random level 2, placing them stacked up correctly in numerical order, and then you'd place the easiest one on top face up. So this is your active hurdle. This is what you're going to be attempting to overcome first, and once you overcome it, then you'll move to the next one, then the next one, and then finally you'll be able to take on the final challenge. These situation cards are another way to increase the difficulty of the game. If you want to add some challenge to your game, you can take a certain number of these, and there are some duplicates in there, so you could play with just one of each type. You could just pick one, you could shuffle them in randomly. The more you put into this deck, this main deck, the harder you're going to make the game, because as these cards come out, they're going to sit in the adventure row like so, and you're going to have to deal with them. You're going to have to resolve them. If not, they're going to be adding additional clouds to your hurdles and your final challenges, which pushes the game timer. As clouds accumulate on these 2 kind of adversaries over here, then eventually bad things will happen, and if the limit is reached on the final challenge, then you lose the game. So shuffling in these into the main deck and making them pop out and having to deal with them, or if you just were to leave them, they would have a lot of lasting negative effects, is a way to increase the game. They recommend, however, for your first game to put these back in the box. So that's what we'll do. All right, then obviously you want to make sure you have your supply of sugar cubes, you want to have your supply of tokens and all that kind of stuff. There's some check marks and some cloud coverage, things like that. So all of this stuff you would want to have out. You could just keep them all in the box if you're using the insert and keep the box nearby. But other than that, you are pretty much set up and ready to play a game, in this instance a solo game, of My Little Pony. Being that this is a deck builder game, one of the main actions that you're going to take on your turn is purchasing cards from the adventure row. If at any point in time you start your turn and they are holes in the adventure row from people purchasing cards before you, you're going to slide everything to the right and refill back up to 6 cards. If, however, at the beginning of your turn, if the adventure row did not move, nobody purchased anything, you're going to take the rightmost card and add it to an adventure row discard pile. Shift everything over to the right and refill back up to 6. That's going to keep the adventure row kind of cycling through. You're not going to be sitting there and for several rounds be staring at a stagnant set of cards that you have no interest in purchasing. But how do you go about purchasing them? In many deck builders, currency on your card is currency, and all you do is use it to recruit cards, buy cards, whatever you want to call it. In this game, however, there are several ways that you might need to pay to bring the card into your deck. You can see here that here's a move payment one. This is a help payment one, and this is an info payment one. So each of these 3 cards needs different icons in order to purchase them. So when it's your turn, you're going to have a 5 card hand, and you're going to start playing cards down in front of you, and you're going to essentially gain those symbols for the turn. Once you've played a card down in front of you, it is considered under your control. So that's important because sometimes the order in which you play a card does matter. If you may have a card that says in your hand, if you have, say, 4 help under your control, you will gain this bonus. Well, if you played that card first and you hadn't played your 4 help cards yet under your control, then you wouldn't get the bonus. But when it's your starting hand here, you're going to have a lot of help, a little bit of movement, and a little bit of info. So I spoke about this ad nauseum during my unboxing video, but in my opinion, these symbols here, the symbols are fine. It's the black and white and very small symbols that bother me. They are just hard to read, and my eyesight is fine. And like this card right here, I at first did not even notice that there was a move symbol on that card. Anyways, I'm going to get off that soapbox and I'm going to come back. And so right now we have essentially 5 help and 1 movement. So we could not purchase Gilda here. We could not even purchase Princess Luna. We could, however, purchase Owlicious or Dr. Hooves. So whichever one of these we'd want to buy, we would essentially say, all right, here's our 5. We're going to purchase Owlicious. Owlicious is going to go into your discard pile. And then maybe you could spend this movement to move to a different location to set yourself up for next turn. Then at the end of your turn, obviously any cards that you played or still have in your hand are going to go into your discard pile, and you're going to draw 5 more. So that's purchasing from the adventure row. Again, not everything is horseshoes, which is the help symbol. You need to pay attention to whatever's up here in the upper right hand corner and pay that cost from symbols in your hand that you can play down, have under your control. You may have acquired at some point some tokens like this, which are yours to keep. You don't have to discard them at the end of the round. And they cover, I think, looks like all the ones that I grabbed are movement tokens. Yes, but they have them for each of the 3 symbols. You acquire them and you can keep them and then play them at any point. So you could, on your turn, have already recruited Owlicious, and then you could say, all right, I'm going to spend these 2 movement tokens to get Gilda as well. You just like the birds, I guess. These would be spent. They would go back to the supply. All right, but those are the 2 ways that you can purchase cards. If a game effect ever tells you to gain a card, whether it be from the adventure row or an ally or a specific type of card, but the keyword is gain. Gaining a card means you just get to take it and you don't have to pay the cost. The other major action that you're going to be taking on your turn is traveling to these various locations and completing the tasks that are listed on those locations. This is going to allow you to trade in your symbols for sugar cubes or maybe some +2 tokens, something like that. But not everything in the game is just about purchasing cards to add to your deck and then trying to attack if you have enough power. A lot of this game is bouncing around between these locations and setting yourself up to take on those hurdles and that final challenge at the end of the game. So in order to, again, you're going to start your character in Ponyville Town Square, and that's what these little standees are for, to signify which location you're in. So in order to move to another location, it doesn't matter whether you're adjacent to them, you simply just need to pay the cost. So in this instance, in my current hand of 5, I actually only have 1 point of movement. So since I'm already in Ponyville Town Square, I could stay here and complete some of these tasks, or let's go ahead and move over to Ponyville Carousel Boutique. Now, once I'm here, I can complete any one of these tasks that I choose. The trick being, though, that once I complete a task, I'm going to cover it up with a check mark. That means no one else can complete that task, and once the boutique has all 3 of its tasks completed, like so, this location is actually going to be removed at the beginning of the next person's turn and replaced with a new location. If your location stack ever runs out, you're stuck. You have not been very efficient with your location tasks, or your tasks at your location. The only difference is that Ponyville Town Square, these, if you complete them, do not get a check mark. They're always available for you. You're never going to replace this location. The only trick being is that you can only complete each one of these once on your turn. So if you are in Town Square, you can pay 1 movement and 1 sugar cube to gain 1 sugar cube from the supply once. You could turn around and pay 2 info to remove 1 card in your discard pile from the game. You could do all 3 of these, but you can only do them once on your turn. You can come back on your next turn and do them all 3 again. Anybody else can come behind you and do them. But again, on your turn, you can only do these actions once. All the rest of the locations, you can only 1 person can complete that action 1 time. Once it's done, it's locked. And once a location, all 3 of the places are locked, you're going to be getting a new location. So it might behoove you to go to a location that, say, only has 1 more task to complete. If you're really needing a specific location to come up, you're going to have to sacrifice a turn to go to the Carousel Boutique, complete that bottom action, and cycle it out of the game. And again, all of the tasks are going to take different symbols, just like buying cards from the adventure row. This one is pay 2 help. This one's pay 2 for info. This one's pay 6 help. This one's pay 2 movement to draw a card. In this instance that we discussed earlier, when I spent my 1 movement to move to the Carousel Boutique, I can no longer spend this movement to pay for this task. And unfortunately, in my hand, I don't have any more movement. I do, however, have a lot of help. So I could come here and say, all right, here's 3 help and 1 help. All right, I'm going to play those down. I'm going to ignore this text for the moment, but I could complete this task where I pay 4 help to gain 1 sugar cube of a color that you have none of. Well, right now I don't have any sugar cubes, so I can take blue and add that to my personal supply. I stated this very briefly earlier, but the large sugar cubes are essentially just worth 5 of the little ones. That's the only difference. But there is a difference between red, pink, green, and blue. So sometimes a hurdle may call for a specific color, so you do want to make sure you are looking at your hurdle. In this instance, it says 2 sugar cubes per player, then flip 1 hurdle. So this one doesn't matter, but other ones might. For example, the final challenge here says each player must contribute 2 pink sugar cubes, and that's each player. So, again, we've already talked about purchasing cards from the adventure row. That's going to improve your deck. The next big thing is moving from location to location and performing the tasks on the location cards. The last big thing that you would want to do on your turn is possibly use your character's special ability. Each character has a starting side and then a flipped side. You always start the game on your starting side, and you can see here that it says flip and pay 3 help. So I actually have 3 help. Here I'll pay with my Gilda card. So I've paid my 3 help to give each player a +2 token. So this would be, and that includes me. So I, as Rainbow Dash, would get a +2 token. That would allow me to turn around and complete this task again. But at this point, I have to flip the card over. I no longer have that special ability until I can pay 1 of each resource to flip this character to the starting side. So, in looking back at our cards here, I have spent my 1 movement, I've spent my 4 help here, but I do have, 1 info. I have 2 help that hasn't been used. Unfortunately, I don't have a movement point. I could overspend and spend this token to get 1 of each, but if I want to flip Rainbow Dash back over in order to get her special ability back, I have to pay 1 of each resource at some point. You can only use your special ability once per turn, and you can only flip your character back over once per turn. So essentially, you could use your special ability, flip the card, pay one of each type of resource, flip it back, but then you're done. All right, you cannot just keep using your special ability to, mill resources and then turn around and use those resources to keep flipping yourself back over. Again, kind of similar to the tasks in Ponyville Town Square, you can only use your special abilities once per turn. The last thing you're going to do on your turn is take on a hurdle or the final challenge. Here we have our active hurdle and our final challenge. So for now, our active hurdle is what we need to be focusing on. To overcome this active hurdle, we need to provide 2 sugar cubes per player. So in a solo game, you are only a single pony. Unfortunately, the rules state that for the purposes of payments and overcoming things like that, you have to consider yourself as 2 ponies. So in this instance, I would have to come up with 4 sugar cubes all by myself. When I do, I then flip 1 hurdle for its added chaos. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But let's say I have these 2 big cubes in my supply. So I have a fair amount of sugar cubes. I feel like I'm ready to take on this final hurdle. A quick note, if you attempt a hurdle or the final challenge, that has to be the last thing you do on your turn. You cannot attempt to overcome a hurdle, fail or succeed either way, and then continue doing other things. So if you want to purchase cards, if you want to move to a location and do a task, if you want to use your special character ability, you need to do that all before you come and take on a hurdle or the final challenge. But at the end of the turn, if you and your other players you're playing with feel like you're ready, you can come and take on the challenge. So at this point, you would say, all right, you're going to announce to the group, if you're playing with a group, I'm going to come and take on this challenge, because your group can support you with cards in their hand and tokens that they may have access to, also sugar cubes. So being that it's a cooperative deck building game, when any one individual says they're going to take on the hurdle, everybody can help them overcome that hurdle. So let's say I have decided to overcome this hurdle. So the biggest thing is that if you have played some cards, say I was worried about not having enough sugar cubes, so I spent a movement to go to a location, and then I had to spend these to complete a task to get a sugar cube. All right, I've already put these cards down. They're out of my hand. They're in my control. As soon as you announce that you are taking on a hurdle, these have to go into your discard pile. You no longer have access to those. You do still have everything that's in your hand. But at this point, you're going to have to come up with 4 sugar cubes per person. So it doesn't specify a type. So I'm like, all right, here's my 5. But to shake things up a little bit, you're going to bring out your stack of unused hurdle cards that you shuffled up earlier in the game. And for a regular hurdle, you're just going to take one, you're going to flip it over, and you're going to look for this chaos symbol in the lower right corner. You don't care anything else. All this stuff can be ignored, even the level. The only thing you're concerned about is the chaos. So what this does is add things that you need to come up with in order to pass the challenge. So we already knew we needed 2 sugar cubes per player, and we've got 5 here. Now we need to come up with +1 per player. So again, playing a solo game, I need to come up with 2 movement. Well, unfortunately, I spent my movement earlier, but maybe as Rainbow Dash, I acquired my ability to get a movement token. Maybe I'm playing with somebody else and they're like, oh, I have +2 movement, a +2 movement token that I can spend. Or maybe this one says additional sugar cubes, like this chaos does at the bottom of this one. So somebody else will say, oh, here, I got a sugar cube. You can have an extra sugar cube, or 2, because if it was a 2-player game. They also can play cards from their hand to gain the symbols on the right hand side. They cannot activate special abilities on cards. They can only play cards to gain those symbols in order to pay for Cover the Chaos. The trick, however, is that if it's not your turn and you play a card to help someone out, you don't redraw that card. You will start your turn with 1, 2, however many less cards you used or have used since it was your last turn. So keep that in mind. But normally, if it's overcoming a hurdle, it's something that you as the group want to go ahead and do. After you have completed it, this chaos card is going to go into a discard pile. And this one, if you overcame it, you get to read the reward section, and then that one's going to go into a discard pile. So again, you have a pretty good stack of cards that you can draw just for chaos purposes, but if this ever runs out, you just take your discard pile, shuffle it up, and create another one. So let's assume here that we overcame this hurdle. Our reward is each player may remove 1 card in their discard pile from the game. All right, bonus, so you're like culling your deck. But let's say we failed. If you fail your hurdle attempt, nothing happens. There's no negative effects. You actually also even get all of your resources back. If you are another player and it wasn't your turn and you played a card, you get that card back. You get everything back. It's kind of all or nothing, but you're not penalized if you flip over that chaos card and can't quite get there. Now, at the end of every round, you are going to be adding these cloud tokens to the active hurdle. If a situation is out, you're going to be adding additional cloud tokens to the active hurdle. And each hurdle and final challenge has a cloud limit. So you can see here, this one is 2 per pony. So again, in a solo game, I have to count myself twice. So that would be 4 plus 4 is 8. So if there is ever 8 clouds on this hurdle, because I've just not been paying attention to it, we have to fire off the setback. In this case, it would be add 1 cloud to the final challenge for each situation in the adventure row. Well, if we weren't playing with situations, that wouldn't be too bad. But you only do the setback once. All right. You leave the clouds up there. All right. You don't, however, get rid of the hurdle. You still, as the ponies, have to overcome the hurdle. The problem is now is that if this is full of cloud cover, anytime that you would add a cloud here, it goes to here instead. And this one's very similar. So this one would be 2 times 2 ponies is 4, plus 5 is 9. If this final challenge ever reaches its limit, in this case 9, you lose the game. So if you allow these to fill up, then the overflow is going to start spilling into your final challenge. And there's not a lot of ways to remove clouds from hurdles or challenges. So keep that in mind. These essentially represent the timer for the game. It allows you to not just keep buying up the best cards and just bouncing around from location to location until you're super ready. The cloud coverage helps advance the game along. So let's say, for example, I did complete this hurdle. We're going to remove it from the game, and we're not going to flip a new one over. All right? Because at the end of your turn, if you would go to place a cloud on the active hurdle and there's not one face up, you don't have to place a cloud. You get that turn off. So anytime you complete a hurdle on your turn, you kind of get to skip that end phase negative effect that you would have to take. So at the beginning of the next person's turn, they would flip over this card and see what the next hurdle is. And again, if it's the active hurdle, you ignore the chaos in its corner. You only care about the chaos for the hurdle card that you flipped over, and you're ignoring the rest. This is very similar to some of the card mechanics used in Marvel Champions from Fantasy Flight Games. Is that there's like the main attack card, so they have a base attack, but then they're going to flip over cards from their deck, and you're just looking for the little symbols in the lower right hand corner. You don't care what any of the other text says. All you care about is those extra symbols, because that's going to add on additional hits. But Once you, as a player, have overcome all of your active hurdles, then you can start focusing on the final challenge here. So for the final challenge here, this one says each player. Earlier, on regular hurdles, if you as an individual player had all the resources to overcome for everybody, you could go in completely solo and take out that hurdle. The final challenge, however, has to be taken on as a group. So in this instance, each player must contribute 2 pink sugar cubes. So again, if I'm playing a 3-player game, I have to put in 2, the person to my right has to put in 2 pink, and the person to my left has to put in 2 pink. Once you have made sure you can cover the resource cost, then you come back over to your hurdle deck, and similar to the main active hurdles, you're going to flip over a card for its chaos, but in the final challenge you flip over 2. So in this instance, we would each have to produce +1 info per pony. So in a 3-player game, that would be 3 more info from anybody's cards. And then we have to come up with +1 more sugar cube. It can be any color. So say I had a blue stashed away, I would put in a blue, somebody else would put in a blue, and somebody else puts in a green. All right, and say we paid the info cost. In that instance, we have successfully completed the final challenge and we win the game. If you go to complete the final challenge and you fail, you don't lose the game. All right, you lose the game again if the cloud cover reaches its limit on the final challenge. In this case, it would be 9 clouds. Last thing, on the final challenges, you'll notice that there's these keywords cloud cover. These are passive, negative passive effects that take place when the cloud cover on the final challenge reaches a certain limit. So in this instance, at 3+, moving to locations costs you not only a movement, but +1 help. And then if you reach 8 cloud coverage, which means you're pretty close to the game being over because you're only 1 away from losing, players cannot gain tokens, essentially. Help, info, or movement tokens. So again, it's just this negative, cumulative negative effect of allowing clouds to build up on these locations that pushes the game, pushes it towards completion. So if at any point 9 clouds or whatever make it on to best night ever, you would lose the game. That's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for giving you a how to play overview. There are a couple of other just very basic rules that you can find in the rule book, one of which though I feel like is necessary to cover to people. You'll notice that sometimes cards like this have a cloud symbol on them. Now this is not clouds that you can spend to purchase anything or complete an action. This actually means that when you play Gilda, she's got some good stats, but she also has this one negative one. When you play Gilda, you're actually going to have to put a cloud on the active hurdle or on the final challenge, whichever is not full and active. So keep that in mind when purchasing cards here. Or for example, Princess Luna here, very expensive card. She's got some cool stuff. She's got a lot of, all the symbols basically, but every time you play her from your hand, you have to lay down a cloud. Again, you don't have to play cards out of your hand. You do have to discard them at the end of the turn, but you don't have to play them. So if you had Princess Luna in your hand and you didn't need all of these other statistics and you were worried about the cloud coverage, you could simply just hold on to her and discard her at the end of your turn. But that symbol is important. It's the only other one I did not cover in this overview. So that's going to do it. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer them. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more content like this in the future, including some form of playthrough of this game, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that bell icon so you can be notified when more videos post to the channel. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.